Did you live here when you were little?
She was carrying a mattress down Crenshaw Boulevard at 3:42 in the afternoon. No cart, no help, no vehicle. Just a young black woman gripping a full-size mattress wrapped in a floral sheet, dragging it 2 feet at a time. Her daughter, no older than 5, walked beside her carrying a stuffed backpack that scraped the pavement. The child was silent in the way children become silent when they've moved too many times. A black Mercedes S-Class slowed half a block behind them. The man in the back seat was finishing an acquisition call, a Koreatown development, 23 units, 18% projected returns. Park Ji-ho had been on this call for 37 minutes. He was 28, wearing a Tom Ford suit that cost 2 months' rent for most people. He looked like he'd been designed by a committee that only approved perfect things. Sharp jawline, dark eyes, the kind of bone structure that made strangers look twice. The leather interior smelled like money and silence. There was imported water he hadn't touched, 6 contracts waiting for his signature, climate control at exactly 70 degrees. Ji-ho had spent 6 years building a life where nothing outside the glass could touch him unless he permitted it. Then something pulled his attention. A woman bent under a mattress tilted so steep she couldn't see ahead. Beside her, a little girl too small to help, walking with a backpack swallowing her whole. Ji-ho watched for 6 seconds. His attorney was still talking. Ji-ho was no longer listening. The woman shifted the mattress forward, another 2 feet. The child adjusted her backpack without being asked, without looking up, without slowing down. Ji-ho's eyes moved past them to the green street sign ahead, West 48th Street. He read it the way you read a name you haven't said in a decade, not with surprise, with the stillness that comes before something buried breaks the surface. He knew this street. He'd lived here until he was 18. He knew what was 3 blocks east. He knew the address without needing to see it. His attorney asked about escrow. Ji-ho didn't answer. "Pull over." The driver's eyes flicked to the mirror. Ji-ho's tone hadn't changed, but something in those 2 words made the driver ease to the curb without questions. The car stopped. Ji-ho ended the call. He set the tablet down. He opened the door. August heat hit him like a wall. So did the sound, a city he'd been driving through for years without hearing. He stepped onto a sidewalk he hadn't stood on since leaving for Stanford. The woman with the mattress was still moving east on 48th Street toward the address he already knew. He didn't follow, not yet. He just stood in his expensive suit and watched her move toward a place that used to be his. Vanessa Bryant had been carrying the mattress for 8 blocks. She'd started at the storage unit on Jefferson at 3:15, the mattress on her back, her daughter Amaya silent beside her. By the 3rd block, her shoulders had stopped burning. The mattress weighed 54 pounds. She weighed 117. She hadn't eaten since yesterday, half a bag of hot Cheetos split with Amaya because 89 cents filled her daughter's stomach long enough to stop questions about dinner. The mattress wasn't heavy like furniture. It was heavy the way the last thing proving you're still a mother is heavy. She stopped at the 5th block, set it against a fence. Breathed. The sheet was coming loose. She tucked it back with hands forming blisters. Amaya stood silent, the backpack almost bigger than her. She didn't ask if they were almost there, didn't ask why they were walking, didn't ask where Daddy was or why they left the shelter this morning. She was 5. She'd lived in 6 places in 2 years. She'd learned what her mother's face looked like when calculating how much farther she could go. She'd learned her job was to be quiet, small, ready to walk when walking resumed. That's not 5-year-old behavior. A Mercedes had stopped behind her. She didn't turn. She'd stopped looking at expensive cars 2 evictions ago. Looking meant hoping. Hoping meant expecting. Expecting meant building something that collapsed when the car drove away. She couldn't afford another collapse. She kept walking. West 48th was 2 blocks ahead, then 1. She counted everything in distance remaining now, in weight still possible, in hours before dark. 2611 West 48th Street. Jiho read the number before Vanessa reached it. He'd known it since he was 7, his first American address. He was 70 feet behind her. She hadn't seen him. He was looking at the building, still standing. The concrete steps chipped at the edges, the same chips from when he was 14. The iron railing rusted through in 2 places. The security gate bent where someone had tried to pry it years ago. The second-floor windows had bars now. They hadn't in 1998. The stucco was cracked along the eastern wall. The building was beige. His mother used to say beige was the color of buildings where people worked too hard to care about wall colors. He had purchased the property records 4 years ago during a routine analysis. The building was still owned by the same deceased landlord, estate in probate, sliding into deferred maintenance, headed for auction. He'd closed the file, never opened it again, told himself it was a bad investment. It wasn't financial. It was the decision of a man who couldn't look at this building without seeing his mother in the window, and who decided not looking was easier than seeing the empty space where she used to be. The woman was at the steps. She set down the mattress, pulled out a padlock key. The city had locked the ground floor unit when the building went into receivership. She'd bought it at county auction 3 weeks ago. She had the key, a bill of sale, and nothing else. Jiho watched her unlock the gate, watched her pull it open. She didn't know whose building this was, didn't know who had painted the kitchen or sat on these steps every Sunday for 9 years. She picked up the mattress, carried it through the gate. The child followed. The door stayed open. Jiho stood on the sidewalk in his Tom Ford suit, looking at the open door of the building his mother had died in, and didn't go inside. 78 hours earlier, Vanessa had been in the Path Shelter intake office, holding county letterhead she'd read 6 times. Due to capacity limitations and expiration of your emergency placement period, your family's stay concludes in 72 hours. The eviction that came 31 days after she'd missed rent because Amaya's ER bill for an asthma attack took every dollar she had. She'd signed that lease 11 months earlier, the week after Amaya's father died. She'd chosen it for the second-floor location and the east-facing bedroom window that got morning light. She'd read somewhere morning light helped children feel safe. Amaya had slept well there. The studio cost $1,340 monthly. Vanessa made $16.50 an hour as a home health aide, 32 hours weekly. In the United States, 2.5 million eviction cases are filed annually. Black women are evicted at nearly 3 times the rate of white women. For families with children under 6, the disruption cascades in ways the system doesn't track. School attendance drops, medical appointments are missed. Chronic stress rewires developing brains in patterns researchers can measure decades later. Vanessa made a list of what she could carry. Amaya's clothes, the inhaler and 2 refills, birth certificates, the death certificate proving her husband had existed. She'd sold her car 5 months earlier when Amaya's medication hit $94 monthly without insurance. A 2008 Nissan Versa. Got $1,400. Covered 2 months medication, 1 month groceries, part of the ER copay. She kept the mattress, not because it was valuable, because it was the surface her daughter slept on, and whatever else she couldn't provide, she could provide that. She'd found the county auction listing at a library workshop. 2611 West 48th Street, Unit A. $3,200 for 11 years unpaid liens. She'd never seen it. Paid in cash, every dollar she'd saved in 2 years. Got the bill of sale by mail. Owned something for the first time since her husband died. 2 years and 8 months before that afternoon, Vanessa had been a nursing assistant at an Inglewood hospice facility. Day shift, 7 to 3:30. She earned $16.50 hourly. It was enough because her husband earned more. Vanessa took 3 months off, not by choice. Amaya stopped talking. At 2.5, she just went silent, stopped responding to her name, stopped sleeping, sat in corners staring at doors, waiting for a sound that wasn't coming. Vanessa spent 3 months on floors beside her daughter, waiting for the silence to break. It broke slowly, in sounds, syllables, words, but never daddy. When Vanessa returned, her position was eliminated. They offered per diem, no guaranteed hours, no benefits. She took them, found a second job, 12 hours weekly at $14 hourly. In the United States, single mother households that lost a spouse in the preceding 24 months fall below poverty at 4 times the rate of two-parent homes. Income drops, insurance lapses, medical costs shift to out-of-pocket, savings deplete, housing destabilizes, everything comes down, month by month, bill by impossible bill. Jiho was still on the sidewalk. Vanessa and Amaya had gone inside, the door open. He was seeing the building not as it was, but as it had been. 21 years ago, the security gate was green. His mother had painted it herself with Rust-Oleum from Western Avenue Hardware. Sunday morning, Jiho on the steps eating rice and kimchi, watching her work. Every 2 years, same green, same ritual. Park Mi-sun bought the ground floor unit in 1996. Jiho was 6. She was 31, a seamstress at a fashion district factory, 10-hour shifts, 6 days weekly. Overtime paid $2 more hourly, the difference between making mortgage and not. No cosigner, no husband. Jiho's father stayed in Seoul, couldn't leave his mother. Mi-sun looked at their son and decided she couldn't stay. She took Jiho 2 suitcases and $1,800 cash to Los Angeles. Slept on a cousin's floor 5 weeks, found the factory job. 3 months later, found the unit. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a closet-sized kitchen. Water damage, cracked tile, 2 working stove burners. She fixed it herself, slept on a mat in the living room, gave Jiho the bedroom because children need doors that close. Sat every Sunday evening before going inside, not because she wanted to, because Jiho's window faced the street and she wanted him to see her there. Wanted him to know she wasn't going anywhere. The chair stayed 9 years. She never replaced it, just maintained it. He was 11 when he asked why their home was smaller than friends' homes. Mi-sun was at the stove, didn't turn around, said 1 sentence in Korean. 집은 벽이 아니라 머무는 결정이다. A home is not the walls. A home is the decision to stay. Jiho didn't understand then. He filed it away. He needed it 18 years later, standing on this sidewalk. Park Mi-sun worked 60-hour weeks for 17 years, slept 5 hours nightly, kept a budget in a notebook, every dollar accounted for. Paid mortgage on the first, in person, because it made the unit feel actually hers. She told Jiho at 17 about an envelope taped under the kitchen drawer. When you need to remember where you came from, read it. He never did, too busy leaving. She was diagnosed with ovarian cancer when Jiho was 24, stage 3. She told him 5 weeks after diagnosis, worked until 3 weeks before she died. Jiho was in New York at a private equity firm, flew back on a Friday. She died Thursday, arrived 16 hours too late. 32 people at the funeral. Jiho stood in back, silent, locked the unit after, took a cab to LAX, flew back to New York, never sold it, never rented it, never returned, never read the letter. That was 10 years ago. Ji-ho left at 23 and built a career that made him one of LA's youngest successful developers within 7 years. Started his own firm at 26, Hanmi Capital Group. The model: acquire underperforming multifamily assets, renovate, reposition at market rate. Market rate was always higher than previous tenants paid. That was the business. He called it value optimization. The displaced families called it something else. In LA County, gentrification-related displacement affects 65,000 households yearly. The process doesn't require malice, just capital, market demand, and a gap between current and potential returns. Ji-ho had developed 9 projects in 5 years, 647 units across 4 neighborhoods. Same pattern: acquire, renovate, lease at market. Existing tenants relocated or absorbed increases, most relocated. Buildings refilled in 90 days. He didn't think of himself as displacing families. He thought of himself as creating value in underutilized assets. The language insulated him like his Mercedes windows. At his resolution, families were invisible. At Vanessa's resolution, they were everything. He donated generously, a scholarship fund in his mother's name, annual contributions to LA Family Housing. He donated from distance, wrote checks at galas, never walked the neighborhoods his projects transformed, until today. Standing on 48th Street, looking at a building that had simply waited while no one maintained it, loved it, or decided to stay. Vanessa didn't know who'd painted these walls, didn't know the woman who'd chosen cream or the boy who'd grown up here. But she understood something without knowing the story. Someone had loved this place. Someone had stayed. Amaya walked in, set the backpack beside the mattress, looked at the ceiling's water stain, then at her mother. "Is this ours?" Vanessa nodded. Amaya sat on the mattress, pulled her knees to her chest, didn't complain about dust or dark or the smell of years closed spaces. Just sat on the same mattress from last night in a different building, accepting this was where it lived now, and where she lived now. Vanessa sat beside her, put her arm around her daughter, said nothing. The mattress, the roof, the walls said everything. They were inside. The door was theirs. The place was standing. Ji-ho stood outside with hands in pockets. Vanessa and Amaya inside, door open. He could hear footsteps on hardwood, the particular creak of the floorboard near the bathroom, the one his mother never fixed because she said it was the apartment saying hello. He hadn't heard it in 10 years. Hearing it now, made by strangers' feet, went through him like frequency through glass, not breaking it, reminding it what it's made of. He looked at the steps. The concrete showed 2 faint circles worn smooth. Marks from the plastic chair sitting there 9 years. The chair was gone. The marks remained. Evidence. He had developed 647 units in 5 years. Never built anything he couldn't sell. Every asset had a price, a buyer, a closing date, an IRR calculated to 3 decimals. He stood before the one property he'd never let go of, and he'd let go anyway. Not by selling, by leaving. Which was worse. He could see through the gate into the hallway, his mother's paint peeling, the light fixture dark, the kitchen doorway visible, the envelope under the drawer still there. Or not. He didn't know, hadn't checked in 10 years. He could hear the woman moving, hear the child in the bedroom, his old bedroom. He stood outside listening to people living in his mother's home and couldn't move. The unit didn't need his money. Didn't need his expertise. It needed something he hadn't used in 10 years. It needed him to walk through a door. Vanessa was in the kitchen when Amaya went to the bedroom. She opened cabinets. Empty. Opened the drawer by the sink. She found a photograph behind the refrigerator, wedged in the gap. Edges bent, colors faded. A woman in factory uniform sitting on the front steps. Not posing. Looking off camera, smiling, tired but not defeated. Behind her, the security gate was green, the door open. Vanessa looked at it long. Didn't know this woman, but recognized something in how she sat. The posture of someone home from a long shift, sitting in the first available spot, not getting up soon. She set the photo on the counter, left it where she could see it. Jiho heard voices inside. Not words, just sound. A woman's voice, a child's, then quiet. The quiet after something's been decided. He stepped through the gate. His shoes on concrete made a sound he hadn't heard since 18. He stopped at the door, could see the hallway. Peeling paint, pencil marks on the doorframe he'd forgotten until this second, when seeing them hit his chest like something swallowed years ago never digested. He knocked on the doorframe. 2 knocks, not loud. The knocks of a man who didn't know what he was doing, but had decided to find out. Vanessa came from the bedroom, saw him. A man in an expensive suit at her door. Her door. She'd owned it 3 weeks, been inside less than an hour. But it was hers. And every experience with men in suits had ended with her losing something. She stopped in the hallway, didn't approach, held the door frame. Amaya behind her, watching through the bedroom door. I grew up in this unit. Vanessa looked at him, then at the hallway, the pencil marks, the photograph, back at him. Silent, calculating. Not numbers, risk. What this man wanted. Whether it would cost her the only thing she'd gain. I'm not here to take it back, he said. She watched his eyes the way she'd learned to watch eyes when people said things, needing verification before belief. His eyes weren't on her, on the hallway behind her, on paint, marks, something she couldn't see because it wasn't in the unit anymore, only in his memory. Then why are you here? He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know. Because answering required admitting something he'd run from 10 years, that he'd left not because he didn't need this place, but because needing it hurt too much. That locking the door was easier than opening it. That every building he'd built since was attempting to fill the space this unit left. He looked past her into the living room, saw the mattress, the backpack, the dust, water stains, 10 years of absence that turned his mother's home barely livable. And on the floor, center of it all, a mattress. Single mattress in a floral sheet, carried 8 blocks by a woman with nothing else to bring. He remembered. Not gradually, all at once, like a room becoming visible when someone turns on a light. His mother moved here when he was 6. Bought it with a loan she'd spent 15 years paying. Had no furniture, no savings after down payment. Just a son, keys, and nothing else. First night, they slept on a borrowed mat on the living room floor. His mother carried it on the bus from her cousins. Jiho didn't remember that night. He was 6. His mother told him at 16. Sitting at the kitchen table Sunday morning. We slept on a mat on the floor the first night. I carried it on the bus. You fell asleep before I finished unrolling it. I lay beside you, listened to the building settle, and decided we'd be okay. He'd forgotten, filed it away, hadn't thought about it in 12 years. Thought about it now. Standing in the doorway looking at a mattress on the floor. Different mattress, different woman, different child, but the same floor, the same decision. The decision to stay. Vanessa's story isn't unusual. It's the most common version of American poverty. The kind that happens not from bad choices, but because the margin was so thin, one ordinary tragedy collapsed it. In the U.S., 3 million children live in households headed by single mothers earning below poverty. For families where the mother became sole parent through spousal death, the first 18 months are financially catastrophic. Average income drops 47%, insurance lapses in 60% within a year. 1 in 3 will experience housing instability within 2 years, involuntary moves, doubling up, shelters, or complete loss. The system wasn't designed for Vanessa, designed to process people who'd already fallen, not catch them mid-fall. By the time it recognized Vanessa, she was already carrying a mattress. County auctions exist between abandonment and opportunity. When owners stop paying taxes, debt accumulates as liens. After statutory periods, liens sell at auction. Buyers purchase debt, not property. Most jurisdictions allow redemption periods. If owners don't redeem, buyers petition for deeds. The unit at 2611 West 48th had been delinquent 11 years. Owner listed, Park Me Son, deceased. No probated estate, no heir claim. Just sat accumulating debt no one paid, deteriorating no one prevented, waiting no one noticed. Jiho had resources to pay fees, could have paid with a single afternoon's portfolio interest. He chose not to. Not from neglect, from the particular avoidance wealthy people afford that poor people can't. He had money to ignore the unit. Vanessa didn't have money to ignore opportunity. She paid $3,200. He could have paid it without noticing. This isn't about one woman and one unit. It's about what happens when distance between those who have and those who need becomes so vast that homes sit empty for years in cities where families sleep in cars. Amaya Bryant was 5, 6 places in 2 years, 3 schools, 4 nights in a car last month. She didn't talk about it. Not told not to. Just learned talking about hard parts didn't make them stop. Did you live here when you were little? Jiho looked at her, nodded. Amaya looked at the walls, the paint layers, cream, green, yellow, cream. Did your mom paint it? Jiho didn't answer immediately. Simple question, child's question. But it landed where his mother's memory lived, and the door had been locked 10 years. And a 5-year-old just opened it with 5 words. She did, he said. Amaya nodded once, satisfied with this answer, as if confirming something already decided. There's an envelope taped under the kitchen drawer. It belongs to me. I'll come back for it. Vanessa looked at him from the doorway. Didn't ask what was in it or when he'd return. Just nodded. He thought about his mother for the first time in 10 years without the thought arriving as pain. It arrived as a question. What would she want him to do with the unit? He didn't need to consider. The answer had been there since he'd seen the mattress. He'd been avoiding it the way he'd avoided the building, the letter, everything requiring him to stop being the man he'd become and remember the boy he'd been. His mother wouldn't have wanted the unit empty, wouldn't have wanted her paint peeling. Wouldn't have wanted the chair gone, stars fading, pencil marks the only proof a child grew up loved inside those walls. She'd have wanted someone in the unit, wanted it doing what it always did, hold someone, keep someone, be the place where someone decided to stay. This isn't charity, not the impulse of a wealthy man moved by poverty. This is a man paying a debt he didn't know he owed until he saw a mattress on a floor he used to sleep on. This is correction. There's a difference. Jiho called his assistant next morning. Find a licensed residential restoration contractor. Told her the address, the scope, full renovation, electrical, plumbing, walls, floors, everything 10 years took, he'd restore. Didn't call Vanessa first. Didn't ask permission. Sent the contractor Thursday morning with instructions to assess and begin within the week. Vanessa met him at the door, listened, looked at his clipboard, the truck at the curb with the company name, then called Jiho. She had his card, he'd left it by the photograph. Hadn't expected to use it. Used it now. I'm not watching someone fix my home for me. If I can't do the work myself, it's not mine. Jiho was quiet, not surprised. He'd heard those words before. Not exact words, exact principle. His mother said it differently. Bilin 것은 내 것이 아니다. What I didn't earn isn't mine. Different words, same woman. Different decade, same kitchen. He told the contractor Vanessa would work alongside the crew. Stripped paint with a heat gun first weekend, patched drywall the second, sanded floors the third, and by day 4 her lines were straighter than the contractor's apprentice. Amaya helped. Wiped baseboards, sorted nails by size, swept sawdust with a broom taller than her. Did these things without being asked, quietly, precisely, as if the place might leave if she didn't care for it. Jiho came Saturdays, drove himself. No driver, no suit. He sanded, scraped, replaced a doorknob, took 50 minutes because he hadn't held a screwdriver for anything but IKEA furniture in 8 years. Wasn't good at it, but did it. There was something in the doing he'd forgotten. Hands changing surfaces, a place becoming different under your effort. 4th Saturday, the crew reached the kitchen, pulled old cabinets to replace water-damaged particle board. The drawer came out in pieces, taped to the underside, an envelope. The foreman brought it to Jiho. White envelope, yellowed edges, sealed with brittle packing tape. His name in his mother's handwriting. He held it, didn't open it, looked at it long, put it in his coat pocket. The coat hanging by the door, left pocket. It stayed there. Vanessa painted the living room Wednesday night after Amaya fell asleep. She'd chosen a color from Western Avenue Hardware. Not cream. Soft sage green, the color of herbs that once grew in coffee cans on the steps, though she didn't know that. She painted by hand, one wall at a time. Roller texture smoothed with second passes. The unit quiet. Only sound the wet drag of roller on plaster, occasional floor creaks under her bare feet. Gladys Washington had lived in Unit C for 37 years. She was 79, had outlived 3 husbands, 1 son, most neighbors she'd known. The building had changed around her, too slow to notice at any moment, too total to ignore across decades. She'd known Mi-sun Park, not well. The way neighbors know each other, through proximity, repetition, small exchanges when 2 women live in the same building, raise children with the same constraints and the same refusal to let those constraints win. She'd watched Mi-sun paint the gate Sunday mornings, heard Jiho playing in the courtyard when small, saw Mi-sun walk to the bus stop every morning at 6:45, return every evening at 5:30, sit on the steps 10 minutes before going inside. Gladys looked at the unit, the repaired gate, cleaned windows, the door sanded to bare wood but unpainted. I knew the woman who lived here before, Mi-sun. I worked at a factory downtown, raised her boy here alone, painted that gate with her own hands every 2 years, sat on those steps every Sunday, rain or shine. She said if she sat there, her son would always know where to find her. Vanessa set down the brush, looked at the steps, the 2 faint circles worn into concrete she'd noticed but not understood. Now she understood. Not damage, evidence. 9 years of a woman sitting in the same place, making herself visible, making herself permanent. In neighborhoods like 48th Street, history isn't kept in archives. It's kept in people. In women like Gladys who lived long enough to remember what buildings used to hold. Community memory, knowledge existing between neighbors, passed through conversation, presence, the simple act of staying long enough to witness. For single mothers, this matters,
Is this
not
ours?
financially, socially. Someone knowing your name, noticing when you came home late, knocking if your lights didn't come on at the usual time. This isn't a program, can't be funded. It's the residue of people staying and paying attention. Gladys had paid attention to Mi-sun 9 years, now paid attention to Vanessa. Not because she was asked, because that's what neighbors did. The only thing left no system could replace, no algorithm replicate, no renovation install. Vanessa stood. Would you like to come inside? Gladys looked at the door Mi-sun touched daily for 9 years. Bare wood now, waiting for someone to choose its next color. She hadn't been inside since Mi-sun's funeral, had stood on these steps, knocked on this gate 100 times, but not passed the threshold since she came to pay respects and the unit was already empty, the boy already gone. She went inside, walked through the hallway, saw the paint, the mattress, the photograph of Mi-sun Vanessa had found and kept on the counter through the entire renovation. Untouched, the one thing not moved. She looked at it long, then at Vanessa. "She would have liked you," Gladys said. "She would have liked you a whole lot." That evening, after the last tools loaded and crew left, Ji-ho returned, parked on the street, walked up the steps. A new chair was there, plastic lawn chair from a Crenshaw thrift store, placed in the exact spot where wear marks had been. She hadn't known the history, just thought a porch needed a chair. Ji-ho sat in it, reached into his pocket, took out the envelope, held it in both hands. He opened it. Inside, a single sheet folded twice, written in his mother's handwriting. Small and precise. Paper yellowed, edges soft, ink still clear. His name at the top, just the name. No dear, no my son. Just Ji-ho. She wrote about the unit, the day she bought it, the loan she wasn't sure she could pay. Carrying a mat on the bus, laying it on the floor, watching her son fall asleep before she finished unrolling it. Lying beside him in dark, listening to the building settle, deciding in that silence this would work. She wrote one final line. 이 집은 벽에 관한 것이 아니었다. 네가 돌아올 곳이 있다는 걸 아는 것에 관한 것이었다. 네가 이걸 읽고 있다면 넌 돌아왔구나. 그게 내가 바라던 전부야. This home was never about the worse. It was about you knowing you had somewhere to come back to. If you're reading this, you came back. That's all I ever needed. Ji-ho read the letter, folded it along original creases, put it back, closed the flap, didn't cry. Sat in the chair on his mother's building steps, looking through the open gate into the hallway. Vanessa upstairs. He could hear her voice reading to Amaya. Words too faint to make out, but rhythm steady. The cadence of a mother reading a bedtime story in a home that belonged to her. Amaya's room still had stars on the ceiling, the old ones removed during renovation. Amaya had chosen new ones, placed them herself, standing on the bed. Press. The mattress was still there. Vanessa had bought a bed frame. Amaya slept on it most nights, but some nights she asked for the mattress. Vanessa never asked why. She knew. The mattress was what stayed the same through everything. Proof. Not that she needed it, that she'd survived needing it. Vanessa Bryant carried a mattress. 8 blocks, 54 pounds, wrapped in a floral sheet, on a Tuesday afternoon in a city that didn't slow down for her. Nobody wrote about it. Nobody photographed it. Nobody gave awards for carrying everything you have left on your back through streets redesigned to serve people who'd never have to carry anything. One built towers, the other carried a mattress. The city noticed the towers. Nobody noticed the mattress. Think about what that says about what we choose to see. The cruelest thing about people like Vanessa isn't what they endure. It's how invisible the endurance is. She carried that mattress past hundreds of cars, not one stopped. Walked 8 blocks in broad daylight, not a single person asked if she needed help. Not because people are cruel, because we've been trained to look past certain kinds of struggle, the same way we look past certain kinds of buildings in certain neighborhoods. There's a building somewhere near you right now that someone's trying to turn into a home. You've driven past it, haven't slowed down. Not because you don't care, because slowing down requires seeing, and seeing requires acknowledging the distance between your life and that building is smaller than you think. There's someone in your life right now carrying something heavy alone. Not a mattress, something heavier, something invisible. They're not asking for help, not because they don't need it, because they stopped expecting it. If this story made you think about that person, send it to them. If it made you uncomfortable about how easily we look past people, that discomfort is useful. Sit with it. Let it change what you notice tomorrow. This is a fictional story. The characters' names and events are entirely imagined. None of this happened. But all of it is happening, right now, in every city in this country. Fiction doesn't fix housing policy, doesn't fund shelters or change zoning laws or lower rents. But it can do something data cannot. It can make you see a mattress on a sidewalk and wonder who's carrying it and where they're going and what it costs them to keep walking. If you want to do more than wonder, organizations like PATH, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, LA Family Housing, and your local community land trusts are doing the structural work stories can only point toward. Look them up, show up, carry something. Stories don't change policy, but they change how we see the people policy is supposed to protect. Subscribe if you have not already done so, because I have more stories dropping soon. So stay tuned. I will see you in the next one.